The Oklahoma City Thunder are a problem. One of the youngest teams in the league, all their best players are 25 years old and younger, and they already look like a contender. Something that we have kind of seen before in Oklahoma City, but this version is totally different. And this game against Houston was a perfect example. Oklahoma City is not supposed to have everything that they have. When you are a team that goes through a rebuild, when you try and put talent together, normally it goes a couple of different ways. Either you have a ton of talent, but it doesn't really fit together super well because you weren't worried about fit. You were just drafting to try and make sure you had the best players. You were making trades to make sure you had the best players. Like the New Orleans Pelicans. They're talented. The team doesn't fit super well together. Not an issue for the Thunder. Or you have like a lot of complementary pieces, but you still don't have the guy, the MVP caliber player. Not a problem for the Thunder. They have SGA. Or you just have the guy. You just have the MVP caliber player. You don't really have the complementary pieces. Not an issue for the Thunder. They somehow managed to put together a roster that, despite their youth, has quite literally everything that they need to compete this year and in the future. And anytime I talk about the Thunder, I have to start with this. They are probably the best spacing team in the entire league. We know that everybody in the league now can shoot. There's all these teams that want to get up a ton of threes. The numbers in Oklahoma City are out of control, and it's a large enough sample size now that it's not a fluke. Jalen Williams is shooting 45% from three on 3.5 attempts per game. Lou Dort's shooting 40% on 5 attempts a game. Chet's shooting 40% on 4.5. SGA 38% this year in addition to everything else that he does. And you've got bench guys like Isaiah Joe, Kaysen Wallace. All these guys are unbelievable shooters. Not, oh man, it's okay if we kind of leave them open, they're going to make about 37% of their threes. No, there is not a single player amongst their best guys that you can just leave open. They're going to destroy you from the three-point line. And part of it is obviously because they have really good shooters, but also the spacing on the floor and the amount of different creators and playmakers that they have. Just in these few clips, you can see Shea creating for an open shot. You can see Jalen Williams creating for an open shot. Chet creates as well. Any one of those guys at any time down the floor can create for the other, and they all can shoot as well. And I will remind you that Jalen Williams is 22, Chet is 21, Lou Dort is 24, and SGA is 25. One of the youngest teams that we've ever seen be this successful in terms of the minutes played by the average age. This is Chet's first full NBA season, and he's doing stuff like this. This is a team that loves playing together. Look at some of these passes that they're making. Jalen Williams was at Santa Clara 2 years ago playing college basketball. And I honestly don't really know how you're supposed to guard these guys with the spacing that they have and the multiple creators that they have. In addition to, they play with such energy and effort. And this is the thing that people have missed about Oklahoma City for the last 2 seasons. When they've been either kind of tanking or just not really trying to compete, everybody has just assumed, oh, well, they're trying to lose games or trying to get better draft luck. They have been decent, and they have played with good energy and played the right way for 2 years now because their coach is really good. And the only reason they were picking at the top of the draft lottery is because they would shut guys down. They would tell Al Horford to go home. They would not play SGA as many minutes. And one, it's worked out perfectly, but two, it's incredible that they were able to develop all the correct habits for 2 years because their coach is so good, and all that stuff is now translating. They don't look like a young team. They don't look like a team that is selfish. They don't look like a team that is seen as some kind of up-and-coming hotshot team. They play the right way. They have great size and length. They're everywhere defensively, but that doesn't mean that they don't have flaws. There's 2 main things that I'm looking at for Oklahoma City towards the end of this year and into the future for them as well. One is they need some kind of matchup alongside Chet Holmgren to deal with some of the bigger bigs throughout the league. If they had to play the Nuggets in a playoff series tomorrow, I have no idea who's going to guard Jokic. Jokic is a problem for every single team in the league. He is one of the biggest matchup nightmares in the entire league, but especially for an Oklahoma City team that is playing Chet at the 5. And even off the bench, they don't have a single person that plays regular minutes that is going to have the size to be able to guard against him. Now, granted, one of the things that makes them so awesome is that they have all these floor spacers, and Chet is part of that. And if you bring in like a traditional big to deal with someone like Jokic, that's going to mess with some of those numbers, of course. But they at least need to have that option. I'm not saying they need a guy that's going to play 25 minutes a game, but in certain matchups, they need a bigger player. And then the other part of this, we talked earlier about, oh, they have all these pieces that fit super well together. There's one piece that absolutely does not fit, and it gets more and more glaring with every single game, and it was apparent in this Houston game as well. Josh Giddey just does not fit on this roster. They got him so that he could be a complementary piece alongside SGA. They basically got him to be what Jalen Williams has now turned into as a secondary creator and a floor spacer with good size and can play make. Josh Giddey just can't shoot, and that has limited everything that he can do alongside this group because everybody else can create and shoot and is a floor spacer, and Giddey just doesn't space the floor. And even when he does try and space the floor, his release takes way too long, and he's basically playing like a power forward out there. There are games where he plays well, hits a couple of shots, and it looks like it fits. But right now, I think if you went into a postseason series for Oklahoma City and they don't need the size of Josh Giddey, I think you're going to see a lot of Cason Wallace. I think you're going to see a lot of Isaiah Joe playing alongside those other guys, just because there's this one glaring piece that just doesn't really fit super well with the other guys. And that's not to say that Josh Giddey isn't good at basketball. I think he definitely has a chance to be a good player, but I do think that he is the piece. He's the one thing that they need to fix over the next couple of seasons, potentially coming up in this offseason, to trade away and fix that spot. They need another guy that can space, that gives them good size, that isn't Josh Giddey. And if they could also turn him somehow into that fit alongside Chet Holmgren in the front court, that would work really, really well as well. But those are literally the only two problems that they have. And I don't see a scenario in which they are not contenders over the next couple of seasons for years and years and years. Yes, at some point the roster is going to get expensive with Chet and Jalen Williams and SGA, but they still have time before all that stuff is a huge issue, and they have plenty of opportunity to make trades and move some stuff around and create the ideal roster. Right now, in this particular season, I think they're in the second tier of contenders behind teams like Denver and Boston, but moving forward, I don't see how they are not in the top tier of contenders for years. I think this year it's going to be difficult for them to make a run, all the way to the finals or anything like that, strictly because they're still so young and they still need to gain so much experience, especially in the postseason. But this game against Houston is just a perfect example of a team that plays the right way, has great playmakers, great floor spacing, plays well defensively. And again, that missing piece that nobody has talked about, they have fantastic coaching as well. Oklahoma City is one of my favorite teams to watch on a nightly basis, and I think specifically in this Houston game, and I really hope that they have a successful postseason and we get to see them in a postseason series against a team like Minnesota, or a team like Denver, and we really get to see how they kind of deal with teams that have more size and how those teams react to playing against Oklahoma City as well, because their floor spacing is going to bother teams like Minnesota. It's going to bother teams like Denver, and the contrasting style of those two kinds of teams, I cannot wait to see. But the bottom line is, if you're a fan of a team that you think is going to be a contender over the next couple of seasons, they're going to have to deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are going to be a thing. They're going to be around for years and years and years. And honestly, I can't wait. And I also can't wait to see what they do in the offseason, because now they have the possibility of extending Gordon Hayward to create this big salary that they could send out to match alongside Josh Giddey. Of course, they have 1 million picks as well. The offseason, the Oklahoma City Thunder, depending on what they do in the postseason this year, is probably the one that I am anticipating the most, because it feels like they are at a point where they could legitimately start to put together a top tier contender for a full decade if they make the right decisions and put more really good pieces on this roster, which history tells us they're absolutely going to be able to do.